April 12th, 1961, news bulletins around the world centered on one man, Yuri Gagarin. Does any of you remember him? He was the first man to travel in space, the Russian cosmonaut. But according to some people, Gagarin was not the first, but the fourth man in space. The objections at that time came from so-called biblical scholars who quoted the Bible to prove that that it was first Elijah, then Enoch, and then Jesus himself, who had previously ascended into the heavens. Well, most of us wouldn't read the Bible in that sort of literal way. I don't know about you, but I certainly have some trouble with the idea that if I was a jet pilot flying over the side of the Ascension that day, I could see Christ in the sky and follow him around. That I can't read that literally. So, and if you could, where was he going next? I mean, where exactly is the right hand of God? Well, an astronaut traveling at the speed of light, it would take 30,000 years to get to the center of our local galaxy. Is that far enough to find the right hand of God? I think most of us would say that this isn't a very helpful way to treat the Ascension story. And it's actually no more helpful than the claim that the Russian cosmonauts made after they came back from space, saying that God did not exist, they'd been to the heavens, and he was not there. Well, last Thursday was Ascension Day, and the reading of that day tells us of Jesus ascending into the sky. If this is not a literal story of space travel, well, then it must be a symbolic story. But symbolic of what? Well, it could sound, if you chose to think of it that way, like a retreat. God came to earth on Christmas and finally gave up at Ascension and retreated back to heaven, kind of like a general does who abandoned the people that he came to liberate. But also is to misconstrue the story. But before he ascends, Jesus says he will be with us forever. So this is no abdication or retreat. The ascension is not about Jesus going up, up, and away, but about his going up, up, and over. It's Jesus telling us that his rule, his kingdom, is not localized to one time or place. He is not simply Lord of Jerusalem or Capernaum in the first century. His rule is over all people and over all time. You heard the story about the little girl who finished her bedtime prayers one night with these words, "And I'm afraid this is a final goodbye from me, God. Tomorrow we're moving to Silva." All right, I made that up. When I lived in Silva, I was very much aware that a lot of people seem to think that it was a God-forsaken place. They even wrote a song about it. You're better off in Iowa eating scrambled eggs than to walk down the streets of Silva on a broken pair of legs. You'll find your ignorance is blissful every doggone time you're across the road from Easy Street on Heart Attack and Fine. But see, those people were wrong, and I'm wrong about Silva. But our God is not a tribal God, not a God of just Bryson City or Silva or even this country, this continent, or this century. He is Lord over all creation. And that is the symbolic significance of going up through the clouds. Christ is King all over. And that's why we sing, "Crown him Lord of all." Christ is absolutely not abandoning this world to sin and suffering. Quite the reverse. In his ascension, Jesus binds heaven and earth together. He's taking all human life, which he cares so deeply about, and bringing it into the very heart of God. For you and for me, it's Christ's promise that ultimately the love of God will be victorious, not merely in one place and time, but over all the cosmos throughout eternity. That's why the Ascension has been described by the Catholics as the festival of the future of the world. Of course, God's rule over creation is not yet complete. The Ascension does not mean that everyone everywhere has accepted the lordship of Christ. Events like Auschwitz, Jonestown, and 9/11 are a reminder, if we needed it, that Christ's universal dominion is not yet fulfilled. As a very human race, we remain mired in sin and suffering, but Christ is on the throne, and his promise is that he will never let us down. Even the earthquake cannot drown out that small, still voice of God. Ultimately, neither a plane into a building, nor a gas chamber, nor even a cross can defeat God's love. An old legend tells how, once upon a time, Mary, the mother of Jesus, made Jesus a cloak, not the one that the soldiers cast lots over at his execution, but a patchwork cloak as resembling Joseph's coat of many colors. Jesus wore it as he traveled and slept with it at night. As he ascended into heaven, this was the cloak that he wore into glory. One version of the story tells how many years later, a new arrival in heaven is met by Jesus, who's still wearing the same multicolored coat. The newcomer notices that the coat is now faded, rugged, ripped, and torn, and yet had an amazing luminosity to it. He asked Jesus about the cloak and why it was both so tattered and yet so full of light. Jesus replies, "Every rip and tear represents the unjust treatment of the poor, which still tears my heart, but through each rip shines the light of God's love." It's been said that the cross is permanently erected in the heart of God. In other words, every single sin and sorrow of humanity has been taken up by Christ to heaven. There it may be set before the eternal love and care of God, in whom shall be the victor. So, against this immense cosmic backdrop, we bring our focus today, this Sunday after Ascension. Remember, in baptism, we declare that we're accepted and blessed as a child of God. And Jesus says to us, "I love you, and because I love you, nothing less than heaven will do." From this day forth, nothing, neither life nor death, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in the creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And he also gives to all of us in our baptism a prayer, and you know it well, but you probably never thought of it like this. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. We're called to bring heaven to earth, to live as brothers and sisters in love, peace, to join in God's working of creating heaven on earth, building an outpost of Christ's heavenly kingdom here today. So just let me close by offering some words from the poet Emily Dickinson, who wrote, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin into his nest again, I shall not live in vain." Our lives will not be in vain, for Christ has claimed us. He's promised us a place in heaven with him, and he has called us to share his work of bringing heaven to earth. And this Sunday after his ascension into the clouds, may God bless you and all God's children now and always. Amen.
Amen.
Remember the words of the Lord Jesus, how he said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive."